Hello and welcome to Top 7 Microsoft 365 Recovery Considerations. Today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we do want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you may be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most of those audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to 3 resources from Veeam today. We've got a 30-day free trial of Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365. We've got a special report on 7 critical reasons for Microsoft 365 Backup. And then there's a Microsoft 365 Backup for Dummies book. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in your handout section as well. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenter. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. It's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. After the event is over, the ATM team will look over all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. So with all that out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic content. It's my pleasure to introduce back to the ATM webinar series our presenter today, Edward Watson, who's Principal Product Marketing Manager at Veeam. Edward, always great to see you.
Yeah, likewise, Scott. Very excited to dive into today's presentation, Top 7 Microsoft 365 Recovery Best Practices.
Super. Well, I'll get out of the scene here and let you take it away.
All right. All right, so for many of you, you understand the need to protect the data in Microsoft 365. You might currently be doing so with leveraging a backup, but there's also lots of different considerations and certainly some limitations as we look across the different vendors in the space. So hopefully we'll get a good idea by the end of this presentation on really where our recovery efforts really need to be spent as we're evaluating backup vendors and certainly leveraging recovery mechanisms. So taking a quick gander here at the market as a whole, it's clear, ransomware has been in the news all the time, especially with the latest events that have happened. And Microsoft 365 is now becoming front and center in terms of the different vulnerabilities that it has built in the system. Unfortunately, right now, of course, Microsoft continues to address a lot of these vulnerabilities. But in one report, said that 80% of the vulnerabilities discovered actually were in Microsoft 365 of the various applications that they were reviewing. Another scary stat here, 53% of organizations have experienced data loss or corruption in their SaaS apps like Microsoft 365, Salesforce within the past year. And lastly, less than 25% are able to recover 100% of their Microsoft 365 data following an incident, whether that's because they didn't have the right backup solution in place or didn't have a backup in place to begin with. So again, the market as a whole is saying very clearly, yes, you absolutely need to protect this data. And of course, Microsoft are coming out with their own first-party backup solution as well, which is just a very clear indication that, yes, we need to protect this critical data and have recovery capabilities. Now, the good thing is, smart folks like you guys on the call today, you understand this, right? So a lot can go wrong. Admins agree. We did we looked at doing a survey here to our customers, and you can clearly see 44% agree on cybersecurity. 42% agree that compliance is important. Maybe they want more restoration capabilities than what's built in, 42% there, or even extending retention beyond what is available in the native systems as well, 30% agree. So definitely there's strong agreement across the board. And ultimately, as a recap here, because we all get this, we all understand this, without a backup of your M365 data, it's all about control. It's all about having control of the data. It's all about making sure that regardless of what happens, you still have that copy. You still have that ability to recover it. You can meet your own individual regulatory exposure that you're held accountable to, your organization. Security vulnerabilities, of course, and retention as well, making sure that you address those retention policy gaps that you might have. So it's clear that when it comes to infiltration into Microsoft 365, there's really three pillars, and these really act as a link in the chain. And if one of these links is broken within that chain, that's where we get into trouble in terms of data loss happening or becoming victim to ransomware. So we've got people, processes, and tech, right? So when it comes to the people, it's all about making sure that they're educated on making sure that they're identifying phishing when they see it or when they think it might be, making sure that there's policies in place around passwords, of course, processes, making sure that there's no alert fatigue and things of that nature. And lastly, on the technology, making sure that there is training in place. And of course, the untested backups can also pose a risk if you don't know if you can actually recover the data or if you're at risk of having slow restoration times as well. Doing a double click into ransomware, we did this we did this report, the Data Protection Trends report last year, and we asked the very question, how did ransomware actually enter your organization? So we asked the question, thinking about the most significant ransomware attack you suffered in the last year, how did it enter your environment? So you can see there some of the, kind of what we would expect, 20% was via some sort of infected patch or software package, 25% on the malicious link or website, or even on the 23% credential compromising, right? Now, the one that stood out to me was that 17% is still via email. So it's this attack via email, most likely through Outlook or through channels like Teams. This is happening more and more. And I think we're probably going to see that 17% via email probably begin to take up a much larger portion of this pie as we go through. And, a good part of preventing this is obviously education and making sure that we know that, look, our users are our first line of defense. Our users act as our firewall in some regards. So there's a big education component. We can have the backup, we can have the restore capabilities, but we need to make sure that our users are educated and skeptical of every communication that they get. How long did it take to notice? So this was kind of interesting. There was this report on how long it took, the percentage of the time that it took to actually identify that something wasn't right or that actually there was an issue or some sort of compromising of the accounts or phishing or ransomware. So it looks like it was more or less pretty stable in terms of the minutes across the board. We are seeing that minutes is slightly going up for account compromising. However, hours it's going down. So that's good to see that the percentage is going down slightly. So it's taking less amount of time for us to identify things are going wrong. However, days on the ransomware or malware attacks, it's taking us days to identify that something is wrong, up 19% from 9. So that's a bit scary there. But I thought this was interesting to see how even it's taking weeks in some cases for a small percentage of folks to identify that there was some sort of malicious event that took place. So now let's get into the meat of the presentation here. Top 7 recovery best practices. What should we be really paying attention to? Well, the first is understand the native recovery limitations, right? So let's first make sure that we know, and we've kind of summarized it here. If we look at E1, and you can see the bottom right, not addressed, some capabilities, and fully addressed. So you can clearly see when it comes to things like data separation, when it comes to things like granular restore, E1 is just not going to cut it if you're looking for those very enhanced recovery capabilities. Now, when we move upstream from E1 to E3 to E5, right, then we start saying, okay, we might have some additional granular restoration capabilities, right, but only some capabilities, still some limitations there, but still a little more capabilities. And then when we add a solution like Veeam on top of this, you can see that now we're actually addressing a lot of these capabilities. So whether it's data separation, Veeam really allows you to store that data separate from the production data. That's key, right? That's key to understanding how you can make sure you get that true data separation. Separation of privileges, right? Offering separate administrative access, right? Expanding restoration capabilities to up to 50 recovery options in some cases. Offering very granular capabilities, both file level and item level restoration, right? So it's key to understanding where those gaps are and how we can fill them with those solutions. Number two, make data immutable, right? One of the ways to make data immutable is to not only make that data immutable, but actually make a backup copy of this data. So that's something that Veeam has actually paid a lot of attention to is look, not only do we want to make the data immutable, let's establish that data separation. Let's create a backup copy and then make it immutable. Let's leverage things like object lock technology via Amazon S3. Let's bring in Azure Blob for Azure Blob versioning, and really establish that immutable protection that we really need when it comes to ransomware proofing this data. And obviously, all of this leads to recovery confidence, because if we know that data can't be impacted or reached in any way, we know that the data that we're recovering is non-corrupted data. We know that this is a clean copy of our data that we can make sure we're recovering from very efficiently. So with that, number two, immutability is key. And obviously there's a 3-2-1 rule, 3 copies of the data, 2 different media types, 1 off-site. This really plays into that best practice, right? Because we're establishing that copy of the data and we're making it completely immutable. Next is ensuring you're leveraging the latest APIs. And you're probably saying, well, yeah, Edward, of course, I'm going to use the latest APIs. And my answer to that is like, many organizations today, or many vendors, I should say, actually do leverage the APIs, but they might not be leveraging the latest APIs. So when I say latest APIs, make sure you're working with a Microsoft partner that is absolutely up to date. And when we think of something like an application like Teams, which relies so heavily on the APIs for the backup, we start to realize that really Teams itself is an abstraction layer that brings together a lot of these applications, right? So it's only a front-end application that has this on the back end. And there is a legacy way that a lot of organizations are protecting Teams. They're protecting it via the sources, and they're not getting the benefit of backing up the Teams configurations. They're not restoring with granularity the Teams channels and tabs. They don't have the efficiency or the speed in terms of how fast they're able to recover the data. So yes, APIs are absolutely critical, and not all vendors are created equal. So not all vendors are going to be right up to date where you need them to be to make sure that you have the efficiency when it comes to your recovery processes. The next one here is keeping SLAs at the forefront. And I think most of us kind of understand the concept of RPOs and RTOs, but these can be really difficult questions to ask ourselves, right? Recovery point objectives. How much data am I actually willing to part ways with? That's a very difficult question for many organizations. If you're only backing up every 24 hours, you're literally, you've got 24 hours worth of data that could potentially be lost. So establishing the right expectations with your leadership, making sure that they truly understand this is how much data could be potentially lost. Kind of helps them understand, but also kind of protects your job as well, because you have that SLA in place that says, look, this is what we're expected to lose. And on the RTO point, making sure that you're working with the right vendor to get you back up and running when you expect to be up and running. So that's very, very important there. And I think sometimes the RTO is the one that's maybe overlooked, but working with a vendor that you're absolutely certain can meet that length of time that you need your operations to be back up and running, extremely important there. Next, we've got number 5 is recovery flexibility. And this is another no-brainer, right slide? But in essence, you have to make sure you have the flexibility to recover any way that your business needs in any given situation. And you would be surprised how different recovery capabilities are from vendor to vendor. When you have restore to original location, you might say, okay, well, most vendors can do that. When you start getting to new location, or once you start getting to these unique file types or these export options or self-service options, that's when you really start to narrow it down to very specific backup vendors. Because once you start going down further down that list, you're going to see that that list really shrinks down to very specific backup vendors that you can work with that are able to deliver all of these restore options that you might need. And you know what? Don't sacrifice any of these options. Make out and build your full list of recovery options. That would be my big takeaway for today, is do not sacrifice on any restoration options that you might need, because when you need them, you will need them. And you have to make sure that you are able to work with a backup vendor that can deliver upon these. Or even these very unique use cases, like exporting in a specific, maybe a PST, or maybe you have auditing use cases or scenarios that might encounter. So definitely ensure that you are able to address whatever use case you need to. The next is ensuring complete visibility. And the reason I've tied this into a recovery presentation here is that if we know what's going on in our backup environment, we're able to more efficiently know how we need to recover the data. So let's say you wake up in the morning, you've got your cup of coffee, you take a look at this full screen of everything that's happening in your environment. You get an at-a-glance dashboard. At Veeam, we call it Veeam 1. And you're entering this dashboard and you can see, am I running out of backup storage? Do I have any errors in my backup environment? Is everything recoverable? Am I able to meet my recovery point objectives right now as it stands today? If you had one just quick screenshot in the morning of all of your backup environment, I think that's what many organizations are looking for today, is just making sure they understand what's going on in their backup environment. And we can do that with Veeam 1 to really help you monitor that data and keep a pulse on that data. And it's all about proactive management. It's all about knowing that you can quickly respond to any changes that happen, or ultimately recover the data if you need, or if anything goes awry. Compliance certainty, I mentioned, you can actually ensure your backup RPOs are met with these reports built in. So again, very important to make sure that you have complete visibility. The next I want to touch on here is self-service recovery. So look, I've talked about a lot of really critical restoration moments. Maybe there's ransomware incidents or some other really really critical incidents that might happen. When it comes to self-service recovery, we're talking more about non-critical restores, maybe those little accidental deletions of maybe a file here or there from a user that you might need to have them take care of it for themselves. So instead of you having to worry about those non-critical data loss incidents, you can have your users take care of it. I think that's something a lot of companies are looking for right now, is just providing that restore portal to the user. They can easily restore their own data, saves you time from having to handle those restores, and it passes on some security for multi-factor authentication in some cases, where they're completely secure in how they restore that data, and they're not going to break anything on the back end or have access to the server or anything like that. They're completely isolated and have that restore capability. So now I'm going to run through, now that we're done with those 7 recovery options, let's just go through this quick checklist as kind of a way to summarize a lot of these things. So these are 3 different categories that IDC actually put together, and this basically helps you narrow down what to look for in a third-party backup. So obviously the features, make sure you've got all the applications you want to back up, make sure you have all the restore options and all the search find capabilities so you can effectively hone in and search and recover exactly the data set you need. Flexibility choice. Can you deploy to any cloud on premises? Can you utilize any storage? Can you have any RPO or RTO that you want? Make sure you're able to do that. Innovation. Are they on the innovation forefront? Are you able to use simple features to get the job done, right? Scalability. Can you handle a large amount of users with this solution? Integrations. Are they integrated with the latest storage types, maybe managed service provider offerings? Are they integrated with hyperscale clouds or S3 compatible? And then lastly, and I think you'd be surprised how many different vendors in market only focus on a handful of different applications or maybe just a fraction of your IT environment for backup. Work with a vendor that does both physical, virtual, cloud, SaaS workloads, IaaS, PaaS, whatever you're looking to protect, make sure they have a breadth of service so that you don't have to make your IT staff learn all these different software types and processes. Leverage one vendor that you know and trust that it can encompass your whole environment. So now I'm going to spend the last 10 minutes or so on the Veeam solution, how we do things on the M365 side. And we have a solution called Veeam Backup from Microsoft 365. And this is all about eliminating the risk of losing your M365 data, whether it's your Office environment, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, whether it's your on-prem as well, your SharePoint on-prem or Exchange on-prem environment. You get a really good hybrid data protection across all your apps. Some of the difference makers here, full infrastructure freedom. Whether you want to deploy on-prem, whether you want to deploy in the Azure or AWS marketplace, and changing at any time the storage that you use. I think that's one of the most critical points with Veeam is we don't force you to use any particular storage type or storage that we might offer attached to our solution. You can change it at any time. You can use Azure 1 year, AWS the next. We do not care at all. We deliver a very low RPO, as often as every 5 minutes in Microsoft's format, and we provide you up to 50 recovery options, and we'll cover just a few of those over the next few slides. I am very excited to mention that actually this past week we announced Cirrus by Veeam. So you might know that we have a software-only solution that's self-managed and deployed. We also have an ecosystem of service providers for a managed backup as a solution service, but now we actually have a Veeam-owned and operated as a service offering, and we have that both from Microsoft 365 as well as Microsoft Azure. So what we've really done is taken our industry-leading M365 solution, and we've basically made it have this ease of use and simplicity that you would expect with a BaaS solution. It means everything's simplified. You get your software, your storage in an all-in-one cloud service, really built to scale, and you can easily create backups, complete restores, and leverage all the industry leading recovery options that many of our customers, hundreds of thousands of customers know and love. So definitely, if you're interested in as a service, we have that as of the last week. So definitely reach out to us about that if you are interested in learning more. So to kind of put a bow on our solution here, to kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together, with version 7, we allow you to leverage a backup for your on-prem and cloud environment. Store it on an object storage or on-prem object storage or locally. and of course, create a backup copy with immutability, whether that's on Azure, Amazon S3 on Glacier, S3 compatible, and conduct those restores via the Veeam Explorers. We allow restore, send, save, export, and self-service options. And of course, all of this is encompassed by Veeam One, the monitoring solution that I mentioned earlier for an at-a-glance dashboard, leveraging reports as well as real-time alerts to keep you plugged into what's happening in your backup environment. Now, I'm not going to cover all these restore options, and I'm sure you're going to be glad about that. But just to give you guys an idea, it's more than just a simple recovery. It's giving you all the options you might need, right? You can email OneDrive files as an attachment. You can leverage restoring back to original locations. You can do self-service restoration for specific tabs and teams. So we get very, very granular in terms of the recovery options that you might need at the item or file level. And lastly, I just want to let you realize here that no other backup vendor in the market protects more data than Veeam for M365. We've got 16 million users protected. And of course, we're always a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And we've been a very loyal gold Microsoft partner as well. So a few additional takeaways here. So get your QR scanners ready. Of course, we do have a lot of these assets linked in the presentation today, or in the platform rather. But we do have this technical guide on how Microsoft 365 backup works for Veeam. So this will give you a lot more. If you're a big reader, this will give you a good comprehensive view on how our solution works from a technical standpoint, a little more of the technical documentation there. And then, of course, like Scott mentioned, we do have a free 30-day trial. So what's really cool about this 30-day free trial is you take this free 30-day trial, you get full functionality, but the really cool part is once that 30 days is over, you can still protect that Microsoft 365 data completely for free up to 10 users. So if you want to continue protecting, say, the C-suite, maybe there's a small department in your organization you want to keep backing up, you can continue to do so completely for free, up to 10 users or 10 teams or a terabyte of SharePoint data. And then I'll just leave you with a few additional takeaways here. So you can deploy, again, just a reminder, deploy it as a service, manage it yourself. Veeam gives you options, whether on-prem, in the cloud, or as a service. So I think with that, I hope everyone learned a thing or two. I think Scott will go ahead and open this up to any questions that we might have.
Yep. Yeah. Super presentation, Edward. Really interesting stuff. And we do have a few questions in here. We've got quite a few minutes here for people. So if you've got anything on your mind, pop them there in the questions queue. But let's see. The first one here, Edward. Somebody's wondering, how much does the Veeam solution cost?
No, good question. Good question. So it actually costs $1.70 per user per month. So it's actually quite a reasonable price. If you look at across all the backup vendors in the market, it's actually not a bad price on a per user basis. And obviously with our new Cirrus solution, it's structured a little bit differently, and the storage is included as well at $4 a user. So slightly bit more storage included. So slight difference there.
Okay. All right. Great. Another question here. Do you have any self-service options?
Self-service options. Yes. So the specific self-service options that we have some for Teams. We have some for all the applications that we support. So again, you can leverage a self-service restore portal, provide that to your users, and they're able to restore that data. So that's definitely something we're able to do. There are some limitations on what data, the specific data types and files within that, but for the most part, most of them are covered within that.
Okay. You'd mentioned some of the benefits of the free product. They're wondering if there are any limitations on the free product.
Yes, yeah. So the only limitations is it is up to 10 users. You do have that 1 terabyte limit on that data. So just be aware that yeah, while you can use that for free, that once you run up to that 10 limit, you will be paying on a per license basis for each user.
Okay. All right, great. Another question in here: are there any security features in this solution? And
Yes.
I assume they're asking about the backup for Microsoft 365.
Yes, yes. So, yes, there is encryption. So, we do have encryption technology for data at rest and object storage. We do have the immutability, obviously, like I mentioned. We also work with the latest in modern multi-factor authentication as well to make sure that your users are logging in securely.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Let's see. Question. Bob pointed out we work in Las Vegas, use the Office 365 platform. Two large Vegas organizations recently suffered network breaches that impaired their operations and brand. They're wondering, how does Veeam backup for my Office 365 protect me or mitigate the damage from a cyber attack?
Yeah, yeah, great question, Bob. So ultimately, the way that we look at backup is that it is our last line of defense. So if for whatever reason the casino was not able to recover the data any other means or get the systems back up and running any other way, the backup is really the last line of defense, so that you can get back that you still have that ability to get the data back. So I'm not obviously I can't speak for how MGM specifically recovered, but I do know if I would hope they would have a backup and be able to recover it that way if needed. So yeah, last line of defense is definitely the way I would look at that.
Last line of defense. Okay, great. The question from Andrew, who's wondering if Veeam offers a fully managed solution where Veeam Microsoft 365 backup can be stored offsite.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we work with service provider partners who can manage the backup, manage everything from the storage to even the restorations as well. So it depends, how much control you'd like, and I know that service providers are able to give you not only fully managed, but also offer you some autonomy and still some control as well, even with their managing it. So a full spectrum of management that you might need.
Okay, super. Jennifer had a additional question about pricing. She was wondering if there were special pricing options for nonprofits.
Yeah, there are actually. There are actually. We definitely would urge you to get in contact with us directly, and we can talk through some options for you on an individual basis.
Okay, super. Question from Susie. Can you do a restore directly from the backup copy?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Let's see. Christopher is wondering, what's the recommended RPO and RTO to have resilience against ransomware attack, and what are the associated costs?
Yeah, I guess the associated costs are just going to be on a case by case basis, depending, what storage you're utilizing, how much data we're talking. Ultimately, when I think of ransomware, I think of really making sure that you're backing up as often as you possibly can. Obviously, I'm not going to. I don't give personal advice on what I think an organization should do, but I think in general, to mitigate data, you're going to want to you're going to want to back up as often as you possibly can in order to mitigate any data, because you could create your backup and then the attack could happen, and then your backup again is not for another 5 hours, and so it's again, what amount of data am I willing to part with? That's a tough question.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Edward, the questions have been rolling in here fast and furious. I've been sort of sending them out to you kind of as I see
Yeah.
them as quickly as I can, but I'm sure I missed some. I hope that you guys can maybe get back to some of these folks after the event.
Yes,
On
we absolutely will. We absolutely
Awesome.
will, and we appreciate everyone joining and all the great questions. Appreciate that.
Yep, and addressed this quite a bit, but just quickly, if somebody does want to get started with the Veeam solutions, your quick recommendation for how they should do that.
Yeah, check out veeam.com. Just type that in, and we've got many different. The site is built in such a way where you can get in touch with us very easily. I think we've even got a chat functionality as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly, and we'll be more than happy to address. There'll be much smarter folks than myself ready to address additional questions you might have.
All right, I don't know about that, but excellent. And Edward, thanks again. Always great to see you. Great presentation. Really appreciate your time today.
You as well. Thanks, Scott. Thanks all.
All right, and we do have one more piece of business before we wrap up, and that's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And so the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Jason Gonzalez from Virginia. So congratulations to Jason. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions today. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.